Welcome to Supply Circles, stories from the innovators, disruptors and improvers in supply chain management today, brought to you by AI Group.
I'm James Scotland. Welcome to today's episode of Supply Circles. I'm coming to you today from the Yunganbar language region in Surfers Paradise. And I've got to say, thank you for listening. This podcast, we ask the question of supply chain professionals and thought leaders, how can we in Australia create supply chains that are resilient and sustainable at a time when we are implementing the challenges of the 3Ds? You know them, I say them every fortnight: digitalisation, decarbonisation and ongoing disruptions. Today, I'm keen to explore these issues through the eyes of a successful Australian business that is both an international seller and buyer and a supplier and a buyer, a bit of everything. I'm keen to test my assumptions of the 3Ds with a supply chain and business operator. This is another episode in the series where I speak with a business owner or operator, and after a raft of excellent guests as business owners, I'm honoured to have on the show today the impressive and always engaging Anthony Kittel, the Managing Director of a company called the REDARC Group. Welcome to the show, Anthony. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, James.
Let me introduce you to the listeners. It's kind of a nice read. For the past 26 years, Anthony has been the Chief Executive of REDARC Electronics. He's the founder and Managing Director of REDARC Defence and Space, founder and Chief Executive of REDARC Technology, founder and President of REDARC Corporation of the USA, and he is a Director of Silentium Defence. As well, Anthony is a graduate of the Harvard Business School's Owner-President Management Group. 2 years of his life where he was pretty busy by the sound of it. He's graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, another fascinating course which I've enjoyed, and a fellow of the South Australian Governor's Leadership Foundation. In April 2018, Anthony was conferred the degree of Doctor of the University Honoris Causa at Flinders University. His honorary doctorate recognises his unrelenting focus on transformative workplace culture and new product development, something I'm going to ask about. And it recognises his investment in the business leaders of tomorrow through mentorship, professional development and career guidance. And it goes on, that's not all. In April 22, Anthony was inducted into the Australian Automotive Aftermarkets Association Hall of Fame. In granting the award, Stuart Charity, the Chief Executive of the association, said, Anthony is one of the true industry pioneers and his commitment to Australian manufacturing is inspiring. That's a CV and a half. I tell you what, Anthony, it sounds like you've had a busy 26 years.
There's certainly no spare time there, James, that's for sure. But it's been a fun ride so far.
Tell us about REDARC. What's the story?
Well, it's a good story. We're over 40 years old. So founded in 1979, a gentleman called Bob Mackey was an electronics engineer, and he started tinkering with electronics in the back room of his house, as I say, in the late 70s, and built a 24 to 12 volt voltage converter. But actually, before he did that, he was tinkering and built a product for his Porsche 911. And I'm lost for words there, thinking what the product was called. But the first version of the product that he developed, it wasn't generating enough heat, and it had a red arc, and so that's how he named the company REDARC. But Bob then went on to develop these 24 to 12 volt converters for the trucking industry, which are needed if you bring a European or Japanese truck into Australia. 24 volt electrical system, and the converter then will step it down so you can run a refrigerator or your lights or a radio on the trucks.
Yeah, sure.
So. Bob ran the company until the mid-90s. Unfortunately, he became ill, moved up to Queensland, was doing R&D up there, and the company was run under management. And then both of those two managers still work for us today. But unfortunately, eventually he passed away due to his illness, and the company was put up for sale. And that's when myself and my father-in-law decided to go into partnership and buy REDARC back in 1997. Dennis, my father-in-law, had a 5-year time frame, and we worked together for that 5 years to I guess, take a very small handmade electronics business in Lonsdale, South Australia, with 8 employees, and I guess look at how we could, develop the business and grow the brand to start with in Australia. And so those first few years, we certainly had a few issues to deal with. And number one was the fact that the founder was the innovator, and because he'd been out of the business for several years, we had to look at how we revamp the products and increase the technology, because they were getting a little bit tired and warranties were increasing. We worked hard on customer service. We worked hard on fixing the products. And I guess by about 2000, we'd grown from 8 people to 10 people, and we'd hit $1 million in revenue. That was a big milestone. And, we're on our way. From there, I guess we set about to write our first business plan. And I often talk to lots of different leadership and business groups, and our first business plan, and it's still a good way of business planning. It's a plan on a page. Top line, where are we now? Middle line, where do we want to be? And the third line is how we're going to get there. And that one-page business plan we put together in the year 2000. And the main goal, whilst there was a number of goals, but the main goal was to grow our business from 1 million to 5 million in 2005. And through, again, 3 or 4 bullet points under each of those headings, we hit 5,020,000 revenue, 5,020,000 in 2005. And so it's nice to have something to aim for and have all your employees really focused on a vision.
Yeah, and the whole thing's been done in South Australia, in Lonsdale, South Australia. You're still there now? We
are. So I guess that company of 8 employees in 1997 is now 365 employees. We have about 140 engineers involved with R&D. And so the company's totally transformed over the years, and obviously now we're selling our products globally, but a much wider range of products. So we diversified from just selling into the trucking industry into the 4x4 automotive industry, and obviously then down the track, caravans, RVs, and more subsequent years in defence and space.
So you have products for the general public now? It's not just business to business, it's also business to consumer? Yeah,
that's right. So we have 2 main product streams. So the first one is power management, and that's where we offer auxiliary power systems. And to a consumer, that's, your auxiliary battery and the solution to run your microwave and your induction cooktop and your coffee machine when you go camping, to a braking segment, which is our world-famous TowPro brake controller, which will operate the brakes on your caravan, your boat, your trailer, your horse float, directly proportional to what's happening with the vehicle. So it works the whole car and trailer as a full system, and we're able to have a very smart product that will guarantee that your car and your trailer brake seamlessly.
I would imagine that many of the people listening to this podcast will say, I didn't know they were made in Adelaide. That will just be, the Adelaide will be the surprise part to the story, because the product is recognised, isn't it? It's well known. It's accepted as a leader.
Yeah. And, I often take people through the factory on tours, and they're blown away by the fact that first thing they say, wow, I didn't know this existed in Adelaide. And I guess, it really came down to a key decision back in about 2005, 2006, to invest in a state-of-the-art facility and state-of-the-art surface mount loading technology to load the electronics onto the circuit boards at a time when most companies were outsourcing to low-cost Southeast Asian countries. So, I sort of look back and think, at the time that was a very risky decision to heavily invest in manufacturing here when, automotive was really suffering. And at the time, Mitsubishi engine plant had closed down. The Mitsubishi car plant was soon to close. And we put a plan to the federal government to say, look, we're going to invest. Would you back us? Because we'll create jobs in the south of Adelaide. And at the time, we were only 34 employees. And so we've certainly met that commitment to grow tenfold.
But that's the go, isn't it? That's when people like me, business consultants, talk to you, business operators. This idea of saying, go against the grain. If everyone else is closing down, think about going hard.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think I'm just super passionate about manufacturing and also understand our customers want high quality products. And so my concern about having a supply chain in a low cost country was, how do you guarantee that product quality? How do you guarantee that robustness that we need in the Australian market? And then, as we found out with COVID, a supply chain that's 16, 20, even 52 weeks long is an impossible task to try and run a factory when you have those sorts of lead times. So by having a really strong Australian and predominantly South Australian supply chain, we've been able to meet all of our customer needs. In fact, one of our customers, a French motorhome builder, we'd supplied all through COVID just in time and never missed a delivery.
Wow.
And yet they had local suppliers that caused them interruptions. So
France was pretty tough. I mean, if his local suppliers were in France, and they did have a hard lockdown.
They did, yeah.
Melbourne people put their hand up and say, yeah, we had a hard lockdown too. But France was hard. It was short, but it was intense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The thing about going back to building in Adelaide or building in Australia or buying from your Southeast Asian suppliers is the products that you're building have to withstand the Australian conditions. And I met you first through the Volvo truck group when I was doing some work with them, and they've got to build trucks in Australia that have conditions totally different from everywhere else in the world. And people who tow caravans have to want to go into where it's tough. Is that been fundamental to the way that you've developed your products? When you say you're sort of worried about customer needs, are you thinking about how hard it is, or are you thinking more about what they might want around? I don't know. What are you thinking about?
Look, you hit the nail on the head when you said, about designing a product for a Volvo truck. I mean, effectively, we've got the harshest road conditions in the world and some of the most extreme environments. So we've learnt, I guess, through that relationship with the truck manufacturers where we started, where the company was born. We've got the most exacting standards that we've got to meet and test to. And so through that knowledge, our engineers are able to build a product for a caravan to survive the Simpson Desert or a trip to Cape York or the Canning Stock route. So
and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. Yeah.
Exactly. So, we've really heavily invested in the test equipment to simulate those environments, both from temperature, vibration, electromagnetic noise, these sorts of areas that it's quite unique. In fact, I've been told our test labs are probably, one of the best in the Southern Hemisphere. So we haven't been afraid to back ourselves and go hard.
I want to talk about R&D because there's an interesting part that'll lead us on to supply. But thinking back to that first business plan when you wanted to go from 1 million to 5 million, was that based around we're going to go aggressively into new markets, or was it based around we're going to create new products? Is it sort of product driven or market driven, or something else?
Look, it was both, and I clearly remember at the time in 2000 we had one major customer, and that was Volvo Truck. And one of the key points we wrote was that we wanted every truck manufacturer or truck company, truck brand in Australia to be using our product. And by 2005, we'd achieved that. So, we're supplying then to the factory at Iveco, we're supplying to Kenworth, to Scania, all the different brands in the market. So that's with the same product.
So same product, same market, basically, but just...
Same product, same market.
Yeah, okay. And?
But then in 2002, we, doubled down and we said we're going to set up this company called REDARC Technologies, and we're going to start to hire engineers and make a strategic commitment to R&D. And so at the time, the research we did was that I think the best companies were investing about 7.5% of their revenue in R&D. Most Australian companies were lucky to be 2.5% of sales back into R&D. So we thought if we could do double the best and aim for 15 cents in every dollar back into R&D and generate a broad range of new products for our customers, then we could be the best. And so we started doing that in 2002. We hired our first design engineer, and that team, as I mentioned, is over 100 engineers today. So,
Wow.
and we're, I guess through that, we're able to, continually come out with new products for both the RV market, the 4x4 market, the American overlanding market, the trucking market, the mining industry, and now the defence industry.
Is it tough to set up an R&D? I mean, I imagine you got some federal government funding, but you've got to invest before you get retained, surely.
Yeah, look, I guess what we aim is, one of our KPIs around R&D investment is what percentage of our revenues is received from products that we've developed in the last 18 months.
Okay.
And I mentioned the number 18 because 5 years ago, our R&D was measured by what percentage of our revenues generated by investment in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the world's moving so fast now that we say, well, if you're not achieving an R&D outcome within 18 months, it's not a good investment. So, yeah, we really push ourselves hard to benchmark against the best and know that every dollar we're putting into R&D, our engineers are creating great product. And that really starts with the process. The whole commercialization process is it's a very well documented and well practiced process in REDARC, and it starts with the customer. It starts with our product category management team and coming up with their ideas, testing it in the market, documenting a customer specification, and then passing it to our systems engineering team who write an engineering specification.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's an investment case and an investment committee, but it's generally it's about an 8-stage process that we go through to commercialize a new product.
How does that connect with current dormant capacity? Are you running at 100%, and when you get a new product, you have to find some new capacity? Is capacity kept in mind when you're thinking about your investment decisions, or are you really looking at the market and saying, we'll worry about the second part of supply later on?
I think one of the gates as part of your product development process is to think about the capacity, and not only that, to think about, we're never going to be the lowest cost producer. So I guess we've got to create great value for money and great quality and great customer satisfaction because we know we're not the cheapest. So, we have to look at that whole manufacturing process and say, how are we going to make this product to create great value for our customer, which means we really need to think about the manufacturing process at the same time we're designing the product. And so we've got a team of engineers called manufacturing engineers, and their role is to work with the design engineers and look at what automation and what systems do we need to put in place and what capacity do we need to be able to create that product. So, we're about to launch a whole new range of products in this next 6-month period. And as our engineers are getting the prototype products ready, our manufacturing engineers are getting the prototype manufacturing automation equipment ready to go. And therefore, the two come together when we do what we call a pre-production run. We're able to test the machines. We're also able to test the product design. And that's an exciting time.
Is this standard thinking? Is it the way it normally works around the world with companies that are constantly looking for new products to push out because they say, well, we can't stay with old products, we won't survive? Do they have that setup of the design and the manufacturing working together hand in hand, or does one normally lead?
Look, I'd say best practice is that they have to work hand in hand, and those engineers need to work closer together to be able to plan that out. And again, when it comes back to your investment case, obviously you're making that investment based on a certain volume product that you want to resell and achieve your outcomes. So, up front, as long as you got really good market intelligence and the front end of the business is giving the right numbers, it's a pretty good guide to how you're going to go about manufacturing the product, what suppliers you need to work with you closely, all the different things that come together to make a finished product, from down to a simple thing, which is still a very complex item, and that's product packaging. All of that needs to be thought of and at various stages throughout the product development process.
Yeah. We're going to talk to a product packaging expert shortly on the podcast and hear about how that's changing.
It's such a skill, and particularly now around sustainability and we're big on trying to remove plastics, eliminate plastics from our plant, and so product packaging and design is a very critical area today.
Yeah, there's also this point of inbuilt obsolescence being, kind of wasteful, but also makes sense because you've got new designs coming through all the time. There's a lot to it.
And I agree. And the other part of that is always complex is when you want to sell in multiple markets around the globe and you have multiple languages, you have multiple standards. Do you have to do a unique package for every country you sell to, or do you look at how you can have a more uniform design that will carry into every market? So when you unbox your iPhone and have a look at all the different documentation and the different standards, I think that's a great example of how to do packaging very well.
It actually is a great example because I did some work in Asia where we looked at all the different markets in a very small part of Southeast Asia. They're all different languages and different religions and different, trigger points, different physiology. And it's hard to get a common standard packaging across all of that. And they use it for different reasons. I mean, Apple's got the advantage of they all use it for the same reasons, but your product would be used differently, and it's pretty tricky. How did I imagine a smart young boy from Adelaide end up running an international business, apart from the fact your father-in-law helped you, carried you?
Yeah. No, look, I effectively grew up in the bush. So I grew up in Port Augusta and
you're a boy from Port Augusta that runs an international business. Man, that's a good story.
So I studied mechanical engineering, and my family couldn't afford to send me to university. So I managed to pick up a cadetship with BHP at the steelworks in Walhalla.
Yeah.
And so I did my a 5-year engineering degree, which I really enjoyed because it was working on the job as well as studying. And so in my first year, I did 6 months in the apprentice training shop, fitting and turning, and then 6 months in the boiler making area. One of my projects I always remember, and I'm proud of the fact that I could turn a toe ball on a manual lathe, which is a skill that doesn't really exist anymore. It's all computer controlled. Yeah. But it was a great training ground for me because I learned at BHP that as a leader and as an engineer, that if you wanted to create a great outcome, you need to involve the team. And so I would walk to the production line where we made the steel, and here's a drawing or here's an idea, and talk to get the production team around and say, look, here's something that I'm thinking about. What do you guys think? And the great thing about that is it transforms from being your idea to our idea.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got a team that embraces it. They give you feedback. You take that feedback on board. And when you want to implement that design, the team's all out 100% in support of you. And I guess you learn the hard way. So the first time is a young engineer, he knows best, to suddenly, okay, now I get it. I need to embrace, ask for feedback, ask for help, get team involvement. And I carry that through to REDARC today. Our shop floor staff have really good ideas because they're the ones making the product every day. I really make sure that we're chatting with them and getting their feedback on how to continuously improve and get better. But coming back to the question, how did I get to REDARC? Well, I worked my time at BHP. I did an MBA full time at Adelaide Uni when I decided that, as I think I was about 24, 25, that whilst I loved engineering, I really wanted to get into business management. Post that course at Adelaide Uni, I worked at a company called ROH, which is aluminium and steel wheel.
Mag wheels? The mag wheels people, yeah.
Mag wheels. And
that's an old term now, I guess.
It is, yeah. But I started as project engineer, then I was manufacturing manager, then I was general manager, all within 3 years.
Are they the guys that have the Roadrunner or the Emu or something on wheels? Is that them?
Yeah, so they've got that's right, they've got a brand Cheviot wheels, which is, I think, the Roadrunner on wheels, the Cheviot brand, which there's somewhere north in Adelaide here, there's a called Cheviot Road, and ROH bought that company, and we had the ROH brand and the Cheviot brand, and I used to have a set of mags on my car.
Memories of my old surfy panel van with mag wheels
That's
on it.
Yeah. That's it.
On. Thanks, Anthony. They were good wheels.
And then just quickly from there, I guess I was about early early 30s, and chatting with Michelle's dad, my wife's dad, and at a family barbecue, and chatting about where I wanted to go and what he enjoyed, and that's when we decided. I was 32 and decided to buy a small business, and we looked around at lots of different companies. I think about 48 companies, and went to visit 5 of them, and couldn't really find exactly what we were looking for. But thankfully, one of the business brokers that we were working with said, "Look, I haven't got anything right now, but if you're prepared to give me a few months, there's a company that's coming on the market that I think would meet your expectations in terms of the things that we were looking for." And that company was REDARC. And I guess whilst we knew nothing about electronics, we thought, well, I knew manufacturing, Dennis knew small business, so I thought it can't be that hard. But we sort of had a bit of a baptism of fire the first year, that was for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to my friend Richard, who is a civil engineer who did an MBA, and I've been telling him for years that the most dangerous thing in the world is to give an engineer an MBA. Then you've got, I think they can conquer the world.
Look, I think it's a great skill set for an engineer, because whilst we should be good technically, we don't really have those sales, marketing, and human resource skills. So I found it just really added that extra area of information, which I was then able to go and practice and learn and hone my skill.
Yeah, it adds the warmer or the softer part of the business to your skill set, of very analytical and very precise.
Absolutely.
2 questions I like to ask people who come on the show is what keeps you up at night, but what gets you out of bed in the morning? And after 26 years of doing this, there must be some new challenges. Is it still the same, or have you found some new excitement, or are you bored?
Never a dull moment at REDARC. Where there's always something happening. And I actually just had 3 months holiday. First time I've had a really good break.
Wow.
And I just, when I came back, the first thing I noticed was the amount of change that I've seen at REDARC in the 3 months I've been gone, which is something that we embrace. And we have a saying that if you're not changing every day, you're standing still, and eventually the competition will move past you. But I guess what keeps me awake at night these days is how we take REDARC from an Australian business to a global business, and our expansion in the United States and our expansion into Europe. The challenges involved in, I guess, growing a company internationally and setting up offices and hiring staff, and just growing your brand globally and being able to satisfy the customer. So
you still think that growth is still fundamental to the REDARC story?
Absolutely. I think, to me, if I don't see growth, then I'll get bored really easily. So I just love the fact that we're able to create these new products and create the growth. What it does actually for the company is it creates so many opportunities for our employees. So by growing, you suddenly, people are able to develop, hone their skills, and then, step up through the company. And, I've got numerous examples of people that have joined us as a young 18-year-old from high school, or as a undergraduate engineer, and they've stayed with us. They're with us, more than 20 years, and they're senior managers in the company today. So without that growth, you can't create those opportunities. So I think that's pretty important. And then, what gets me out of bed every day is I just love talking to customers and love working with customers and seeing how we've made a difference in their lives. We're always getting feedback from customers about the fact that, how our products have enabled them to achieve their goals, whether that be a really great camping trip in the Simpson, or the fact that, I had an email where, I guess, an elderly couple were driving their vehicle along the line, an iron ore train up in the northwest of WA, and they were coming up towards the crossing, and they felt they had sufficient time to cross in front of the iron ore train. But before they knew it, the train was almost on them, and they hit the brakes, and they wrote me a letter just to say what a wonderful product our TowPro brake controller is, because it, in their words, it saved their life.
Yeah, it's just not a product, is it? It's part of Australian life. Yeah, good on you. Well done. As a CEO, one of the big, or the chairperson, whichever, all those different roles, there is a lot of pressure on you in the digital age to make sure that not only are you reacting to the digital requirements of the marketplace, selling them online and whatever, but also that you're protecting your business and your clients and your staff. Is that an ongoing? Is that number one on your list? This cybersecurity or what?
Look, if it's not number one, it's certainly really, really close to number one. We've invested heavily in cybersecurity, obviously because we're a defence business as well. So that's really, I guess, pulled us from a SME into the area where we need to be, paying a lot of attention and investing to make sure that we're up to the latest technology in terms of, a connected products and connected factory. We invest a lot in the digitalisation of our factory so that we're getting real-time information. Obviously, e-commerce and working directly with our customers is growing all the time. Now we have artificial intelligence, and I guess how can we utilise that to again offer really great customer service by, I guess, if there's a customer rings with a particular problem, how we can use the artificial intelligence to mine all the knowledge that we've got and be able to provide a really factual, intelligent answer. It's moving really, really fast, and as much as it's a challenge, it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thesis of this podcast is that the way to build resilient and sustainable supply chains is through digitalisation and also accepting decarbonisation, and ongoing disruptions are going to be part of your business. I want to talk to you about how you act as a supplier. You've sort of painted a good picture of the markets that you're chasing, the products and whatever. So we'll take a break and come back and talk about that. I noticed you said that the business was started in 1979, a long time ago. And for someone my age, that doesn't always rings weird. That's a long time ago. And I saw a thing the other day that said if Back to the Future was made today, what's his name? I forget his name. The fellow in Back to the Future would go back to 1990, and the mother that he was trying to rescue back in 1990 is the equivalent of Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
It wasn't Back to the 50s like in Back to the Future. Yeah. It was sure. 1990s. It ages us all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's come back in a few minutes and talk about supply.
If you have supply chain or business improvement challenges, contact AI Group's Business Improvement and Growth Hub. The Big Hub is a library of practical and relevant resources designed to assist member businesses to grow and improve. The Big Hub also includes an extensive network of experienced, pre-qualified business improvement consultants. For more details, contact big@aigroup.com.au. That's big@aigroup.com.au.
Anthony, the business is now an international business, and you have many markets, some of which are business to business, some of which, as you said, are business to consumer. I know that you deal with big manufacturers such as Volvo and trucks, and you said before that you're in the defence industry, so you have prime contractors as your buyers. That means that you have to be a good supplier. How do you be a good supplier?
It's a complex question, but I guess to sort of chunk it down into bite-sized pieces, I guess the first one is you need to understand your customer and really understand what they need to create a great product. So,
because they are different, aren't they? I mean, defence is different from the manufacturing business, which is different from retail.
Absolutely. Certainly with defence, it's not just about the product; it's all of the documentation and the supporting data that you need to supply. If you didn't understand that customer, you give them the product and say, there you go, and end of story, but that's only the beginning of the story. So really understand the customer. I think understand what their quality needs are is always a big thing. And, we're always going through quality audits from our customers, which we're really proud to do because we get the chance to show off our facilities and all the testing and the certifications that we have. I think, at the end of the day, it's about delivery in full and on time. And again, by having an Australian manufacturing plant with a strong supply base, we're able to meet those requirements. And I mentioned about the French motorhome company. and particularly supplying the automotive industry and defence. We've got to meet the deadlines that are needed.
So is that a major KPI of yours, this delivery and full?
Absolutely. Yeah. DIFOT is a big measure of ours to customer satisfaction.
Because when you talk to the bigger customers like Bolo, and you talk to I was talking to some defence people, of course, over the last few weeks, they say, if you're going to be a supplier to us, you have to supply metrics. You have to tell us that you can do what you do, one, quality, and two, delivery. Is that is that your lived experience?
Absolutely. When we go to the US, the first thing they ask you is, can you meet our capacity?
Okay.
How much capacity have you got? Uh-huh. Can you supply us on time? How are you going to supply from the other side of the world? And, so we've set up warehouses in specific countries to be able to service the market. So in Europe, we service the market out of a warehouse in Poland. In the US, we service out of a warehouse in North Carolina. So you've got to be prepared to make that investment to be a good supplier. You can't just say, well, we've got a great product, end of story. Yeah. So I guess that comes back to understanding their needs. And, we met with one of the large automotive manufacturers in Detroit recently. And, the first thing they wanted to know was, well, how can you get an engineer to our line? Where's the product going to be stored? So there's a whole bunch of questions that you could tell for them was important if you wanted to win a supply contract with them. So
the American automotive industry for many years was based around just in time, absolute minute just in time. There was a popular story that Ford or someone, if the factory broke down in the Midwest, the California factory would close 2 hours later. I think it's popular, but it's the idea of. Sure. Are they still fully committed to just in time? Because we've moved away from it a little bit down here on the island at the end of the earth, where we've had to build a bit more, fat into our capacity, into our operations.
Look, I think it's fair to say you've got to build a bit of fat into your operations to ensure you can supply just in time. But I guess the large businesses don't want to carry that fat. They expect the suppliers to manage that for them. And that's a measure of being a good supplier, is that you're able to work to their schedule adjustments and still meet your deliveries.
Right.
With your forecasting and having that communication with your customer to know when their schedule changes, or how do you react? How quickly can you support them? So again, if you're on the other side of the world, how do you do that when you're meeting a delivery lead time in a factory in Detroit? So again, by having that warehouse as a buffer just helps you manage that.
Does that mean that you don't go to them as the lowest cost option because you have to carry that fat? You have to be, you say, we'll get DIFOT, but you won't get cheap.
Look, I think at the end of the day, they're the customer, so you meet their expectations, and again, if you can't meet their measures, then it's best not to supply, because it's a death spiral if you're going to start being a low cost provider and absorbing all those costs. So of course you need to have a relationship where you can work closely together and understand what costs you're absorbing on their behalf, but you still need to meet their requirements.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your suppliers, how you act as a buyer. We were saying on this show that someone came up with it in one of the earlier episodes, bad buyers get fired. In other words, if you do want everything, I want the highest quality, I want it on time, I want it at low price, I want to change my demands all the time. Eventually the suppliers say, no, bugger that, I'm going somewhere else. I don't need that headache. Do you take that approach to your suppliers and say, we're going to build good relationships? What's the story?
Yeah. Look, I treat our suppliers as partners, and I treat them as personal friends. So many of our suppliers we've had for more than 20 years. And the reason being is that they've grown as we've grown, they've grown, and they understand our business. And the loyalty that you build, by showing that loyalty, you get back in spades. So I think it's, for us, I have companies wanting to win business from us, and I say, well, look, we already have a partner who supplies us that particular sort of plastic, or that aluminium extrusion, or whatever it might be. And I don't mean to be rude to the people trying to win our business, but to me, the relationship is more important than taking the lowest cost. So we're whilst we absolutely need to be competitive, and you share that with your partner. If you've got a really good relationship, you say, look, these are the pressures we're under, and we've shared, we've had to share that in more recent times as material costs have been ballooning. You got to work together, because ultimately, if your supplier fails, then you'll fail. So, again, if no point sending your supplier broke, because it takes a long time for them to understand how you work, what sort of quality levels you need, you're just in time, whether it's Kanban, all the different systems that you've got. So, I'm a big one in being loyal to your suppliers and having it be, by all means, have a frank conversation, a robust conversation, but at the end of the day, we work together.
How do you go about finding suppliers around the world? Because you've got suppliers from other parts of the world. Do you have people wandering the world all the time looking for the latest? We
do. We've built a really strong supply chain team here at REDARC, and Richard Burley heads up that team, and he's got global purchasing experience, and so we've certainly hired people that have that global purchasing experience as well. So they do scour the world for suppliers, depending on what we need, and as we get more innovative, we do need to look at different suppliers. I think also, obviously, the Australian industry was somewhat decimated when the automotive industry shut down, and there's a lot of sheet metal, plastics, other areas that we've lost in Australia. But thankfully, there's still some good companies around that we can use. Look, I guess depends. It's horses for courses, depending on what you need and where you're supplying. Whether we're supplying in the United States, and do we need a partner there to work with us, because it doesn't make sense to ship a fully finished product there, or we might use a local supplier and put the final assembly in the country where it's being used.
What about decarbonisations, the other D? Your business will need to be decarbonised by 2050. That's just the rules. But that's in Australia. Around the world, at various changes. America's got North Carolina, I think, is on a decarbonised path. How much is that taking up of your management's mental space?
We have a key person with that responsibility in REDARC, and we also employ a sustainability engineer. We've got an environmental sustainability team of employees that cover that subject off on a monthly basis. At the moment, 48% of our total energy comes from renewable energy.
Because Adelaide's quite advanced in that. I mean, it's going to give you an advantage, because Adelaide's quite advanced in their renewable.
It does. So, we don't have a square centimetre left on our roof. Our building is, I think, about 3,600 square metres, and every element of the roof is covered with solar panels. Wow. We've got significant battery storage capacity. As I say, 48% of the total energy consumption's now from solar. But we'll be net zero by 2025. So we've got a really solid plan on ESG and achieving that goal.
2025, that's nice and aggressive. Good on you.
Yeah, so we're doing really well.
It seems to me the thing that keeps coming back to me from what you're saying is that you've got staff members that have been with you for a long time. You've got clients. Yes. Volvo's been with you since the 70s. You've got suppliers that have been with you for more than 20 years. And so you're a very stable, very loyal business, but at the same time, constant growth, new innovation, changing, accepting the requirements that need to change your business totally. So it's this sort of innovative company with a traditional base, which makes me ask you about your leadership, your personal leadership. What are your things? How do you define your leadership? I notice that you're a fellow of the SA Governor's leadership. So you must have thought about your leadership. How do you do it? How do you maintain this consistency but still be innovative with people all around you?
Yeah. So obviously we work really hard on our culture, and there's a number of key elements that make up the culture. And obviously if we're going to be an innovative company, we need to be prepared to take risks. And if you want a culture that takes risks, you need to make sure that you empower your employees and allow them to make decisions and make make mistakes and learn from that. I think we're really, really big on teamwork, really big on care and attention, and looking after our staff. And I guess that I'm really passionate about that, knowing all of our employee names. And, we are a family business, but, we're a 350 person family business.
It's a big family, yeah.
It's a big family. And I think, like I said about having growth ambitions, is that we've got to be willing to accept change, because if you're not changing every day, and I have this saying that we've got to change 1% every day, because by the end of the year, that's real innovation. So what's every employee doing today differently than what they did yesterday? And if we could all do one little thing different, then ultimately you add all that together, and it's amazing the amount of change that you can achieve. So I think having a willingness to embrace that, and a culture where people actually look forward to that, is, we've had that from the beginning, and we still have it today. We work really hard on our recruitment. I think that helps us create that culture. So we have a multiple step recruitment process where those 8 employees that we originally started with back in 1997 when I bought the company, 2 have passed on, 1's retired. So we've still got 5 in the business. They play an active role in our recruitment process. So one of our interviews,
that's like the Marine Corps idea of you get your best Marines to go and find the new recruits.
Yeah. So one of our interviews is a cultural interview, and we'll always get one of those employees to sit in on that interview, and I guess ask questions and gain knowledge about that employee and whether they'd be suitable to fit with our culture. And that takes time. We would never hire off one interview. There's always a minimum of 3 interviews, and it always takes several weeks.
You get it right at the beginning, because it'll come back to bite you if you don't.
Yeah, it only takes one bad apple to cause problems. So I'd sort of regard the business as a club, and if you're running a social club or a sporting club, you don't need a member that's going to cause you trouble. So we have that same philosophy around REDARC, and so we pay a lot of attention to that recruitment. And I think it's a two-way street. It's not just about us selecting the employee, it's about the employees selecting us. So by meeting, they meet a minimum of 6 people through that process, and they get a really good understanding of who we are and what we stand for, and they can ask, their fellow colleagues will interview them, so they get to be able to ask the sorts of questions in an interview that you don't want to ask the manager. What's it like around here? How do you enjoy working here?
How does it really work around here rather than
That's
right.
Pitch, yeah. Exactly. So, those sorts of things I think we really work hard on.
I think it's really true, because my management philosophy when I was running businesses was if someone comes to work for me and they don't really fit, and they don't really like it, it's not really fulfilling for them. If they stay with me for 3 years, I've wasted 3 years of their life. I've wasted 3 years of their 20-year career. It's not fair on them as well as me. It's up to me to make sure that I get the right people, because it's unfair.
Yeah, one thing we do around that is, I think if we're going to have a world-class company, we've got to have world-class people, because like I mentioned, we can't compete on cost. So we've got to compete on, knowledge is power. So my engineering degree and my MBA were funded by BHP. And what we do here is if any employee wants to do any personal development, whether that be an apprenticeship, whether it be a degree or a master's or even a PhD, we fully fund all of that. Because again, we want to create great employees, and it gets paid back to us in spades and in loyalty.
Do you think, just heading towards the end, do you think Australia is doing enough of that? The general feeling is that we're not developing people.
I think there's no doubt at the moment the skill shortage we've got is dire, and investment in people is critical, and particularly our younger people, and having them embrace maths and science more at school, and giving them pathways, not necessarily just to university, but into technical colleges and areas where they can hone their skills if they're good with their hands.
I guess my question was, do you think it should be it's best done via the employer type arrangement, or are you doing that only because You have to.
No, I think it's both. I think the employer has got to take responsibility, and again, you come back to the old days of traineeships where the company funded my development. Obviously, the government can support that, but I think it's got to be a two-way street. So it needs both government and company investment.
This is a great story. It's a wonderful example of the mouse that roared, the little business in Adelaide that became a global success. It's been great to hear your story. All through this conversation, I've been reminded of a saying that I said back in my management career, which was, if you run your business today like you ran it yesterday, you'll be out of business tomorrow. This idea of constant evolution, constant occasional revolution, but constant evolution into the next phase.
Thank you, James.
It's a great story. The idea of such loyal customers and loyal staff and loyal suppliers helping you launch onto the world and stay there by being innovation. It's a wonderful story. Thank you for your time. What's next for you? What do you got happening in the next 12 months? Are you going to start taking longer holidays, or are you going to be back cracking the whip?
No, I've had my nice break. I'm rejuvenated, and I'm about to head to London and then to United States, and very much on that, helping support that growth phase. So no, we're full steam ahead.
Good on you. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best. Well, that's it for another episode of Supply Circles. Thanks again to everyone for listening, and thanks for your feedback that I get each week and each fortnight. It's greatly appreciated. If you have any feedback on today's interview with Anthony Kittel or ideas for the show, or just want to give me some feedback, hit me up at james.scotland with one T, james.scotland@aigroup.com.au, or head over to my LinkedIn page. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back in a fortnight with more insights into the keys to building sustainable supply chains. Thanks for joining me. This is Supply Circles. I'm James Scotland. Bye for now.